Biological Science, he will officially welcome you all. The session 2 will be chaired by Mannava Sivakumar, Senior Consultant, World Meteorological Organization, United Nations, and Dr. Anil Kumar Singh will assist him. Now I would like to give the floor to our Dean, Professor Dr. A.K.M. Mahbub Hassan.
Thank you, sir. This is my great privilege to welcome this distinguished scientist in South Asia, in Bangladesh. So, you know that Dhaka University and Faculty of Biological Sciences arranging this international conference on climate change and food security in South Asia. And this session or this conference has been started from yesterday, and it will go until tomorrow. So this is the scientific session will be started from maybe 9 a.m. So hopefully you, the scientists, came from the other countries in our country. So at first I welcome you to be here and to present your data and the information with us. This is very and vital conference on climate change, because all over the scientists in the world, we know that this is very much concerned issue in the world. This is climate change, because in climate change, there are a lot of change in the world is occurring. But I have my personal concern that if we concern only on the climate change and its effect only on the human, only on the plant, only on the animal, only on the environment, I think there are so many scientists are engaged in separately. But so far I know recently or a few years ago, there is a term on health. So it addresses all the issues in the world. So personally, I think we should not only focus only on the human health, animal health, environment, etc. But I think we should think globally how we can address all the issues due to the change in climate. Because if the climate change, if it's a great effect on the temperature, if temperature is increased, the dangerousness or the impact is not only the health, not only the plant, not only the food, but also all over the factors involved in the world. Say, for example, environment, and we know that recently we have faced the corona pandemic because the temperature has increased and the virus that lived in the animal has infected to the human body. So if we address all the issues in it together, I think the great scientists, the eminent scientists of the world, we can solve this problem. Then finally I would say we shall have to live with any adverse situation of the nature in this world. I think we, the scientists, can solve this problem. Then again, I would like to welcome all the scientists that has been come from different countries in South Asia. So that is all. Thank you very much. I hope you will enjoy in Bangladesh and will enjoy your session and will learn many things from your presentation. Thank you very much. Jai Bangla.
Now, in this session, session 2 is on national perspectives of Bangladesh. The first presentation will be made by Mr. Moniruzzaman. He is Additional Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Please.
Honorable Chair, Professor Dr. A.K. Mahbub Hassan of today's technical session, distinguished panelists, distinguished participants, good morning. Today, it's my great opportunity and privilege to present our country paper, Climate Change in Bangladesh, on this auspicious program. This is a prestigious and glorious program arranged by the University of Dhaka on the occasion of birth centennial program of our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. On behalf of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, I would like to convey my homage tributes to the father of the nation and the martyrs and the freedom fighters of Bangladesh and our present leader, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and the issue which will be discussed today is not only cause for concern, but it is the question of existence of human being on this planet, on this earth. In this perspective, I would like to present my paper, Climate Change and Bangladesh. Bangladesh, an innocent victim of climate change, is widely considered as one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. According to the Global Climate Risk Index 2021, published by German Watch, Bangladesh is ranked 7th among the countries affected most in 2000 to 2019 due to climate change. However, the country's contribution to global warming is negligible, only 0.47% of global emission, with per capita 0.98 carbon dioxide emission. Climate change has emerged as the biggest threat to sustainable development in the country and triggering widespread and unprecedented impacts that disproportionately burden the poorest and marginalized people. Extreme temperature, erratic rainfall, flood and drought, more intense tropical cyclones, sea level rise, seasonal variation, river bank erosion, ocean acidification are causing severe negative impacts on food security, livelihoods, health, and education of millions of people of Bangladesh. Along with causing increasingly frequent and severe tropical cyclones, climate change is interrupting the traditional rain patterns of the country, droughts in some areas, whereas heavy rainfall in other countries of the other part of the country within a short period of time, leading to an increasing in flooding, river bank erosion, triggering an area larger than in small island countries washes away every year. Sea level rise is the biggest threat for Bangladesh among all the external drivers. Bangladesh's low and flat topography makes its coastal area particularly susceptible to rising sea threats. According to IPCC 6th Assessment Report, AR6, Bangladesh faces the following vulnerabilities due to sea level rise. Almost 26 million people are currently exposed to very high salinity in shallow groundwater in coastal Bangladesh. Many low-lying coastal aquifers are contaminated with increased salinity due to land use change, rising sea level, reduced stream flows, and increased storm surge inundation. Indo-Gangetic basin reveals the sustainable groundwater supplies are constrained by extensive contamination, e.g. arsenic, salinity, then depletion. Between 2012 to 2050, a freshwater river is expected to decrease from 40 to 17% in the southwest coastal zone of Bangladesh. Also, freshwater river is expected to decrease from 40 to 17 or 20% from 2012 to 2050 under different sea level rise scenarios in the southwest coastal zone of Bangladesh. As climate change progresses, Bangladesh is at risk of increased floods, droughts, and salinity intrusion are expected to increase the destruction of crops. According to IPCC's AR6, Bangladesh faces the following vulnerabilities. Agricultural sector is most likely to face significant yield reduction in future due to climate variability. In 2017, floods affected 220,000 hectares of nearly ready-to-harvested summer paddy crop and resulted in almost 30% a year-on-year increase in paddy prices. Farmers in Bangladesh are likely to use extra irrigation as a result of the severity of drought. Salinity intrusion into freshwater aquaculture have changed the water quality of inland ponds, resulting in loss of fisheries production also. Failure and reduced access to fish, which contribute to non-economic losses associated with involuntary migration and malnutrition of children. Government initiatives to address this climate change. Under the able leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, the government is striving hard to continue the economic development while keeping an eye on achieving climate resilient sustainable development. The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is the national focal ministry in the country, taking initiatives and coordinating all activities addressing climate change on behalf of the government of Bangladesh. The government adopted a comprehensive strategy and action plan that is titled Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan in 2009, and it is a living document comprising 44 programs under 6 thematic areas, where the first thematic area is food security, social protection, and health. Recently, the government has revised and drafted the updated BCCASP to make it more focused and action-oriented. In addition to numerous cyclone and flood shelters across the country, hundreds of Mujib Killa, specially designed raised land, have been constructed to shelter the livestock in coastal region during the cyclone or tidal surge. Currently, the country is in process of advancement and formulation of National Adaptation Plan that will significantly enhance our adaptation ambition. Once completed by the end of June 2022, the NAP is expected to be the main strategic document under the UNFCCC process in the future to implement adaptation actions in developing countries. Distinguished participant, Bangladesh revised and submitted updated nationally determined contribution, that is called NDC, on 26th August 2021, just before COP26 in Glasgow. It is enhancing both the unconditional and conditional contribution with ambitious quantifiable mitigation targets. In the updated NDC, Bangladesh has committed to reduce GHG emission by 27.56 million metric ton or 6.73% as business as usual in the 2030 as unconditional contribution, where reducing and additional emission by 61.9 million metric ton, that is 15.12% below business as usual in 2030 as a conditional contribution. Earlier, Bangladesh has formulated the Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, a 100-year strategy to deal with the riverine and coastal adaptation issues, especially to secure the future water resources and mitigate the likely effects of climate change and natural disasters. A chair of the 55 Nations Climate Vulnerable Forum, Her Excellency Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina launched a program to develop Climate Prosperity Plan, which will be strategic investment framework to mobilize financing, especially through international cooperation, for ensuring climate resilience in each member country. In this line, we are going to implement Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan 2022 to 2041, setting Bangladesh's trajectory from one vulnerability to resilience to prosperity. Bangladesh is recognized globally for its success in climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. In the super cyclone Bhola of 1970, 500,000 coastal people died, but in 2020, the cyclone Amphan caused less than 30 deaths. About 1.6 million people were moved to safety before the struck. The government has taken initiatives to address the rehabilitation of climate displaced people. The government is implementing a rehabilitation project titled Asrayan 2 for 0.25 million landless, homeless, displaced and helpless people in 2010 to 2022. In the meantime, 192,000 families have been rehabilitated at the cost of $350 million through its project. At the earlier phase of the project, the government has rehabilitated almost 0.1 million poor people. Very recently, 70,000 houses are being provided by the government to the homeless people. The government has constructed 4,291 cyclone shelters all over the coast, besides additional 523 flood shelters have been constructed in flood-prone areas in the country. In addition, 550 Mujib Killa have been constructed to shelter the livestock in coastal regions during the cyclone and tidal surge. About 56,000 volunteers are engaged in disaster risk reduction under Cyclone Preparedness Program. Bangladesh has established its own national climate finance mechanism, that is Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund, from its own resources in the fiscal year 2009 and 10, and so far allocated around 480 million USD that supports about 800 projects to implement strategic action plan of BCC SAP. Over the last 7 years, the annual development plan and climate relevant allocations has doubled, increased from $1.44 billion in the fiscal year 2015-16 to about 2.96 billion in the fiscal year 2021 for climate adaptation, resilience, and building initiatives. Bangladesh has accessed climate finance for the implementing adaptation and mitigation initiatives from global funds like GCF, LDCF, Adaptation Fund, Global Environment Facility Fund, and Climate Bridge Funds. All these contributed to total of 747 million $. Distinguished participants, panelists, and scientists of today's session. What I have presented, it is almost known to all of us. Just I have remind all of us to put a special attention for doing special action to save the people of Bangladesh, to save the people of vulnerable countries in the world who are the innocent victim of climate change. And this climate change, that is the human-induced cost, most are driven by the consumption and production of developed countries. But as we know, in the Paris Agreement, there was a commitment or pledge to deliver 100 billion USD per year, but we did not get even 50% of it. And just in the COP26 in Glasgow, our Honorable Prime Minister raised her voices on behalf of CBF countries to 5 points demand. Number one, to be committed, to be in line, to be in action to limit the global temperature 1.5 degree. To fulfill the commitment of delivery of 100 billion US$ every year and to make it double after 2025. And among the fund, there should be equal ratio both to the adaptation and mitigation. And another vital issue is easy transfer of green technology. And all of us are concerned and we feel that it is not possible to survive with the help of foreign fund or foreign financial resources. We have to fight ourselves. And especially in South Asia, we have to put our hands and shoulders together to fight against climate change through innovation in adaptation activities. And from today's technical session, I would expect some brilliant suggestions for shaping our present as well as future policies. I would like to convey my thanks and gratitude again for giving me the opportunity to be here. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Munir for the presentation. I now invite Dr. Mohammed Billal Hossain.
International Conference on Climate Change and Food Security in South Asia on the occasion of the Mujib Borsha. It was organized by the CCFS, Honorable Chair, and the panelists, Dr. Mustafizur Rahman, Professor, Department of Soil, Water and Environment, and the Chief Coordinator of this conference, and the senior scientists, academicians of different institutes of national and international. Good morning, everybody. And my special thanks to the organizer for inviting me here to say something. In fact, 2.5 years back, I was in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and now I am working as an environmental specialist under the ICT division in a World Bank funded project. And the previous speaker, he already mentioned some of the issues and initiatives that have taken by Bangladesh government nationally and internationally. And some of those may be duplication, but I will try to skip those things to save the time. I'm sorry to say the presentation slide is not working here, and it is not visible here. Though I have taken all the slides. So, and my previous presenter already discussed the vulnerability of Bangladesh, and he said according to the CRI, Global CRI Index, Climate Risk Index 2021, Bangladesh ranks 7th. And 2017, in fact, it was 6th. And and this, I would say, some of the important factors. And this vulnerability, in fact, yes, some of the anthropogenic reasons, but there's some natural reasons also. Our geographical location, our natural settings, you know, the 3 sides of our country bounded by, you say, India, Myanmar, and the south side is one by the Bay of Bengal. So our country is situated, you say, in a pocket. So in that sense, it is already vulnerable. And the country has a very low-lying flat topography, except the northeast and southeast region. About 10% of the country is hardly 1 meter above the mean sea level, and 1/3 is under the tidal excursions. So, this vulnerability actually not only this, the extreme temperature, is erratic rainfall, food and drought, more intense tropical cyclones, sea level rise, seasonal variation, riverbank erosion, ocean acidification are causing severe negative impacts on the lives and livelihoods of millions of peoples of Bangladesh. And this scenario, I see that you say not only in Bangladesh, maybe in the world, in the globe, some countries also facing some of these issues also. And if we say because of this vulnerability, some of the impacts, it's a major impacts, as you say, the sea level rise. That's the important issue in my country. The salinity, the temperature, that's a very important issue. And this sea level rise, you say, is increasing the salinity in Bangladesh. And there is a data, it was 2007, there is a study, the 1.5 million hectares under mild salinity in 1973. And it is, in the 2007 became the 3 million. But it is not the latest data. The latest data is more. And IPCC projected increase of sea level rise 14 centimeter by 2030, 32 by 2050, and 88 by 2100 compared to 2000. This is that is the IPCC projection. And the significant sea level rise has been measured in Bangladesh, 4 millimeter per year at Hiron Point in the west, 6 millimeter per year at Chor Ganga in the center of the country, at Hathi area, and even 8 millimeter per year at Cox's Bazar in the southwest. And I have taken this source from a study. And World Bank in 2010, they predicted the 1 meter sea level rise would inundate 18% of the country's land. And a recent study by the Department of Environment in Dhaka on the sea level rise shows that the average sea level rise in the coastal zone of Bangladesh is 3.8 to 5.8 millimeter per year over the last 30 years. The study illustrates that about 12.34% to 17.9% of the coastal area will be submerged due to the sea level rise by this century. And because of the sea level rise, the salinity and saltwater intrusion in case soils is expected to affect many areas of Borishal, Chittagong, Khulna, and increase of soil salinity is expected to vary from 26% up to 54% in most affected areas by 2050. This is from a World Bank study. And you know the trend of temperature, you say the average temperature shows an increasing trend, especially during the monsoon season at 0.07 degrees Celsius per decade, and during early winter, 0.12 degrees Celsius per decade. And according to IPCC, in 2007, higher temperature and erratic rainfall have in some areas contributed to wetlands drying up and ecosystem degradation. And the glacial melt and the Gulf, glacial lake outburst flood. I think the Nepali participants use it well, the Gulf. Glacial melt in the Himalayas, accelerated by increasing temperature, is having effects on many of the great river basin downstream. including the GBM basin. Himalayan glaciers have reduced by 21% in area since the 1980s Water Assessment Program 2009 and have lost about 174 gigatons of water between 2003 to 2009, which contribute to catastrophic floods in these basins. I have taken this from a study. A glacial melt that form large lakes behind temporary dams of ice and moraine. When these dams fail, the water is released, resulting in massive flash flood. Apart from the dangers of bluffs, climate change threatens to upset the precarious balance in Himalayan water tower, which feeds large parts of the region. In the short time, this poses dangers of hazards such as the glacial lake outburst floods, flash floods, and floods. And my previous speaker also already discussed about the food security. And you know the important is according to the IPCC, fourth assessment report, estimates that by 250, Bangladesh's total rice production could be decreased by about 8% compared to 1990, and wheat by 32%. Bangladesh's total wheat production may be lost. One study carried out by Khatun and Nozul from 2010, there's a wheat production may be lost, primarily due to heat stress. And day before yesterday, maybe Delhi Star had published a report that currently countries miss the 15 to 20% of the demand from the domestic productions, the wheat. So if climate change affects, that will be a danger for the country. And that way fishery also will be affected, and this will affect our health. It's a vector-borne disease and others. And the Ministry of Fish also already discussed about the country initiatives they have taken, and he already discussed the Bangladesh climate change strategies in action plans, which have 6 thematic areas of the 44 programs, so 144 actions that have been identified within the thematic areas. And Bangladesh has 2 national climate change trust funds. One is the Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund, and other is the Bangladesh Climate Change Resilience Fund. And to operationalize the trust fund properly, Climate Change Trust Act was enacted in the 2010. And Bangladesh is the first developing country in the world that has taken a comprehensive climate plan titled Bangladesh Climate Change Strategies and Action Plan in 2009. Recently, the government has drafted a revised BCCP to update it with the changing circumstances. The country established its own national climate finance mechanism, Bangladesh Climate Trust Fund, from its own resources in the financial year 2009-2010, implement the strategic actions of the BCC SAP. From 2009 to 10 to current fiscal year 2001 to 2020, this fiscal year, Bangladesh government has allocated Dhaka 3,819 crore, US dollar 490 million. From 2009 to fiscal year, the current. And as of December 2021, 840 projects undertaken, and out of that, 779 is a government and 61 is non-government projects. So, and this is very important issue, and the representatives from the international, this is the good initiative, great initiative from the Bangladesh government. The government from its own sources, they are taking this initiative, they are taking these actions to mitigate the climate change effects. Among these projects, 473 projects are completed, and some of the important projects are, you say, cyclone resilient houses, cyclone shelters, riverbank protection works, waste management, supply of pure drinking water, afforestation, extension of solar technology, climate tolerant seed varieties, and so on. But there's some picture here regarding the COP26, where our Prime Minister already attended, and she was very active there. So it's not possible to see here because of the technical problem, the laptop. And my colleague, the Moniruzzaman already discussed about the NDC issues. And Bangladesh put forward quantified emission reduction commitments, 6.73%. I mean 27.56 million tons carbon dioxide equivalent reductions in the unconditional. An additional 15.12%, I mean 61.91 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent reduction in the conditional scenario by 2030. And this updated NDC covers energy, power, transport, energy use in industry, residential, commercial, agriculture, and brick manufacturing, emissions, fugitive emissions, industrial process, products, agriculture, forestry, and other land use, and waste sectors. And you know, the Bangladesh now is the chair of CVF, Climate Vulnerable Forum. And CVF is the international forum for countries most threatened by the climate change, composed of 48 member countries from the Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, Latin America, and the Pacific. And it represents some 1.2 billion people worldwide. It was founded in November 2009 by the Maldives at Malé, together with 10 other countries. Bangladesh assumed the presidency of the forum for the second time in April 2020 for the period of 2020 to 2022, taking over from the Marshall Islands amidst the global COVID-19 pandemic. And Bangladesh is well known as the role model for climate change adaptation activities. Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and chair of the GCA, Global Center on Adaptation, and former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon jointly inaugurated a regional office of Global Center on Adaptation in Dhaka, 8 September 2020. At Dhaka, in the Department of Environment, that office is located in the Agargaon area. So, that is all. And finally, I would like to say, Bangladesh is already dealing with multiple interlinked crises such as the degradation of the nature, environmental pollution, and adverse impacts of the climate change. COVID-19 pandemic has further exposed and deepened its vulnerability and threatened to undermine the country's progress towards climate resilient, sustainable development. Unless recovery measures are fair, inclusive, and ambitious, decades of development gains could be wiped out. Thank you very much for your patience hearing.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I now invite Dr. Muhammad Qumrul Hassan, Professor, Department of Geology, University of Dhaka, and he is going to make a presentation on climate change adaptation, the Bangladesh perspective and approach. Please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning, everybody. But the audience is little. This is a normal. From international to local, every here in the morning session is similar as that. Respected the chair, the Dean of the Bioscience is now not here, and the other two foreign guests, Professor Sivakumar, Dr. Sivakumar. I think I'm the second time to attend this conference. We are in the 2008, maybe, in the Sunargaon and here. At that time, I was the chair of the geology department, and I have the opportunity to end of my service this June. I have the 42 plus the job in Dhaka University, then I full retirement. Thank you again. And the second person, Professor Anil Kumar Singh, nice to meet you. Yesterday we have to talk to many things. I welcome to Bangladesh and see our university and other side too, if you have a time. I just before the two lectures here, they are the policymaker, and I have many things here, but we have only 25 minutes, and I have just my title is, this is Climate Change Adaptation, the Bangladesh Perspective and Approach. This is one good catalog if we can make in future for Bangladesh as well as Southeast Asia. And when I was the chair of the geology department, I was connected with the UNESCO chair in Japan, and I have the opportunity to some outside the disasters, climate change, other issues from there. And I did my all undergraduation, graduation, post-graduation, postdoc from Germany. And both the two countries, we learned many things. Now I switch over to the USA. I am the Geological Society of America professional member. That is why in the global aspect and the climate change issue, water related, environment, and disaster science, climate, etc. Basically, I am a geologist. Planet and the solar system should be changed timely. But nowadays, the enforcement to thrust to the planet and they are rapidly changing. You see the temperature. When you go in the temperature series, time series, last 200 years for Bangladesh, and you learn how increase it. Last 100 years, this is the 0.07 degrees in southeast Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a tiny country by landmass. Hello. My landmass, please. But by population, Bangladesh is the 8th position in the global aspect. Oh. না আপনি শুরু থেকে যান না প্রথম দিকে হ্যাঁ by population we have the 8th position nearly, and our manpower more or less fine. More than 1 crore people are working abroad, and rest of the we are in the Dhaka, Bangladesh. And you know your international conference is leading to focusing food, flood, etc. You know if you go the history of the geology of Bangladesh or Southeast Asia, then what about the Bangladesh position? Is it a delta deposition? The sediment comes from northern side, from Himalayan. Where is Himalayan? Previously it is a Sea of Tethys. We have a 2 supercontinent in the global, and in the Himalaya is the 5 successive upheaval during our geological past. And we are now at the present Bangladesh is, see the Bangladesh a small state, and this map shows some boundary line from southern side interest of a saline water intrusion. When you go to the northern side, then we have a severe, in the flood time, the upstream is high, water comes from the rivers and stream and channels. You know Bangladesh, I call the land of sediment, land of rivers, land of population, and land of resources. If we can go in the Singapore, they have no resource, but they goes up due the policy making and the business policy, others. The other resource comes from the Malaysia. And look, now the event is operating in the European side, Ukraine and Russia. When the conflict is there and the European side, the resource is stopped and then and a catastrophic the global supermarket. This is the man-made disaster. When you go the disaster science, the Earth planet is always moving. So we have some disaster from natural side, plus if we induce the man-made, then it comes more. I just go, everybody knows the Bangladesh and encyclopedia where the Bangladesh and ours. I do not say anymore here because time constraint. I just say that I already mentioned the climate change adaptation, and this is long-term vision. If I can make 5 years plan, then I can make one catalog and books for in this regard. I just idea, innovation in these lectures. You see the Bangladesh coastal belt, how long is, not so big, but we have this length and immediate. The coastal morphology, topography, sea level, somebody says sea level rise. Somebody says the climate change issue. What is the issue? First, you have to identify the issues. If you do not identify the issues, you cannot solve solution about the problem. That is our Southeast Asia problem, not in Bangladesh. First, you detect the issues and then go the issue for solution. And this is just our observation and under Science, Minister of Science and Technology project output to see the Bangladesh in southern side, because we are hammering from southern bay, cyclone, storm, tidal propagation, etc. We need to have closer Bangladesh monitoring system, right from sea level rise. Somebody says some centimeters, some inches, but there is no accurate benchmark position. I knocked to Bangladesh Naval Force, others, the concerned authority, but they have very little. When I look for the earthquake system, there is no 2, 3, 4 epicenter to determine. At least any disaster science estimation, it needs a data density. If the data density is not enough, then this is not good result. Because now the IT is the computer science, you input the computer and the output from the system, that is, you need to have proper data. I just use here, the Bangladesh is a huge population. Okay, we have a population. But if you have a trained population, then we have to make our global supporting to individual countries. You know, our peacekeeping commission, other manpower to Middle East and others, and skill hand, many our students and Bangladeshi now working at the United States Department and professor. When I visit several universities in the USA, I find out someone from Bangladesh or nearby. And this is another resource from our economical aspect. When I specified the coastal, because our big populations are settled in the coastal side, then we have to think about the coastal planning. How to plan, how to survive, how much the cyclone storm here, then that things include the adaptation. Previously, if you can go the last 50 years or 100 years before Bangladesh countryside, we are only mode of transportation by boat. No vehicle enough to Dinajpur to Dhaka or Chittagong to Dhaka. Everybody used by boat or something else. If I can cite an example, globally, the 10 cities in the global, they are situated nearby the seaside or riverside, because the ancient time we used the valley, water, the population movement, everything in the geomorphologic nature in the valley. This slide shows Bangladesh climate change issue, environmental issue, whatever you like. I find out the flooding. When I was visited first time in Europe, oh, your Bangladesh, a flood, etc., etc. Now, European side under threatening the flooding. Now in Japan, they are under threat the flooding. And the Nepal, always our neighbor, he always avoiding the flooding. The flood water comes from India and then first to the Bangladesh side. You know, I have already mentioned that Bangladesh is a tiny landmass, but we have 56 to 58 river stream and canals outside from Bangladesh, 2 from Burma or Myanmar. If my Indian colleague is here, I've already shot in Calcutta, Bombay, Gujarat, Hyderabad. We are the scientists, we know that under natural flow, you cannot obstacle anything. But if you can protect or dam or anything, then you have some adverse effect locally. If we can make, you have to estimate the water budget in Himalayan range. Then you have to sharing by all 5, 6 countries. And we can think about the citizens of each country, the machineries on the top of the local government, their own government, their policy, if catch the appropriate location, then it's good. Otherwise, it is a difficult side. Here in Bangladesh, the flooding, sedimentation, water logging, drainage congestion, salinity, erosion, accretion, subsidence, cyclone, tidal flooding, fisheries, food and agriculture. Food and agriculture focusing here. It is important for humankind. Deforestation, afforestation, navigation, wetland, biodiversity, at the end, health and education, within bracket ESD. Because I was involved in the Japan with the ESD, Education for Sustainable Development. That's United Nations University in Tokyo and the United Nations University in Lüneburg, Germany. Just I looked the Bangladesh rainfall. Why I put here this map, everybody knows the rainfall. But you see, that I have a tiny small country, but its northeastern part is heavy rainfall rate. The Indian colleague knows the Cherrapunji, where is the highest precipitation. Because now, if you can go in the Sunamganj and southwestern Sylhet, you are thrusting our paddy underwater because flush flood water. This is in coastal side, the development, and now we are thinking of the coastal engineering for development of our big mega project to see. This slide shows the coastal side, the island erosion, accretion, deposition phenomena. If we can develop this island in a position to develop landform, then you have to think about this process. This is a map for earthquake system. We have divided in 3 parts Bangladesh, the seismic zoning, and this is last 100 years cyclone storm, the remarkable play, the direction of cyclone. And cyclone, if you can visit the coastal belt in Bangladesh, then you have to see some cyclone shelter, etc., etc. Then this is very temporary shelter. This is not accurate solution, very temporary. This map shows the soil salinity. Here I can say the food security. We have a scientist from BD and Agriculture University. I have recommended to please think about salt tolerance cropping pattern. Then you have to survive in coastal belt. And they will succeed in this way. This is the Riverside and Coastal Development Program. This is one slide for saline water invasion to Bangladesh. When upstream water is decreasing in the dry period, then saline water is upcoming invasion to on land. These two maps shows is we have Sundarban, the mangrove forest, the part 60% inside and 40% in India. But we have another forest in Chokuria, Sundarban. But now the present generation, they did not know about this Sundarban. We have killed and cutting the all vegetation here and nothing in Chokuria. Then this map shows the geological some aspect, and this is the subsurface in the coastal belt, saline water intrusion in Kulla down to Mongla. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in fact, we are behind time. Now there are two more presentations in this session. And I was told that at 10:30, there is supposed to be a presentation by Jiva Siraj. She is based in the United States. And apparently she really wants to make her Zoom presentation at 10:30. But so I need to now ask whether the next presentation is from Craig Meisner and Muhammad Yusuf Ali. Is any of them here?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Any questions? I am here.
Afterwards. So apparently there is no presentation from Craig Meisner and Muhammad Yusuf Ali. None of them is here. Okay, in that case, I will now request Mazharul Aziz. Mazharul, you are here? Mazharul? Oh, it's not. Mazharul also is not here. So what we can do is to just in 5 minutes. Where?
We will go for Jabba Siraj, then we will go for tea break.
Okay. Now, apparently, as I mentioned, the 10:30 presentation is supposed to be from Zeba Siraj on the topic of evolving land races of the coast and their utilization in salt tolerance breeding. So I now request Zeba Siraj, because she is going to make the presentation through Zoom. Can I ask her to please make the presentation?
Thank you very much. Thanks very much to the organizers for inviting me to speak, particularly Professor Mustafizur Rahman. I'm very grateful. I'm honored to be here to present my talk, and I've been given 15 minutes, so I'll try to finish. So my topic is the evolving land races of the coast and their utilization for breeding purposes. We know the scenario of Bangladesh coastal area where the salinity is rising over the years, and the current salinity levels is below the blue line, where in the dry season crops cannot be, particularly rice, which is salt sensitive, it cannot be grown. And in the worst case scenario, if you can see the red line, salinity is going to advance up till there. So the predicted rise in salinity levels in the coast is actually, it covers 1/5 of the cultivable area in Bangladesh, and the normal rice crop does not grow above, a certain level of salinity. So there will be a median increase of 26% in salinity is projected by 2050, with increases of over 55% in most affected areas. And rice yield is predicted to decline by 15.6% in 9 coastal upazilas, where measured soil salinity will exceed 4 decisiemens per meter by 2050. And at the same time, the population will increase from 160 to 214 million by 2050. So rice is our staple crop, but it happens to be a salt sensitive crop, and it's very sensitive at 2 developmental stages. One is, when it's very like 2 weeks old seedlings, and again at the maturity stage where it's very sensitive. So when the seeds are setting, it's very, very sensitive to salt. And on the right, you can see a salt affected rice crop, almost burnt out. But nature has a lot of traditional varieties which have adapted to growth in their locality over many, many years. And they provide an evolving pool of traits that can be tapped, such as salinity tolerance. And as you can see, even Bangladeshi variety, Bangladesh is actually origin of for diversity for rice, some region in Bangladesh. So we have been working with this particular land race, which is named Horkuch. It's a salt-tolerant land race. It has low loss in fertility under salt, and this naturally grows in the salinity-affected coastal areas of Bangladesh. It has evolved over many, many years and has adapted to the saline coastal conditions. So it's also referred to as a traditional variety. So these traditional land races, their characteristics are there, there's a lot of, the plants are very tall, and all the photosynthate is actually concentrated in the plant rather than the grains. So few grains are set only once a year, and it's mostly leaves. So here, these traditional varieties they do not produce enough grain to feed our population. On the other hand, on the right hand side, we see a commercial variety where there's a lot of grain. And this is called a good plant type, and all characters reflect the plant's capacity to produce high number of yields. So it's short to medium, it's not very tall, and it's very, very high yielding, and it's designed to put the sun's energy into its grains. So this is the scenario. So let's see what happens to a traditional land race, which is, as I say, it is evolved in the salt tolerant. So under normal conditions, it's not going to produce much grain, as you can see in this box. And whereas a high yielding variety will produce at least 5 or 6 times the amount that the traditional variety produces, this is under normal conditions. But let's see what happens when there's salt. When there's salt stress, the traditional variety doesn't lose much yield, whereas in the high yielding or the commercial variety, no grains actually set under salt. So that's the difference. So what we can do is we can try and take the salinity tolerance trait from this traditional variety and introduce into the background of a commercial rice. So how can we do that? One, we can do conventional breeding, but that has not been very successful because salinity tolerance, it's controlled by multiple traits, and it's difficult to breed multiple traits into a single variety. So what we can do is we can use molecular tools to identify the salt tolerant loci, and then use markers to introduce that, to help the breeding. Or we can do transgenics, but transgenics are not very popular as yet. So, and once we have the molecular tools to handle, then we can introduce these specific multiple loci which control salt tolerance into commercial rice, and that's exactly what we've done. So we took this horcoach and we genetically mapped it, and the colored bar shows the regions where these chromosomal loci actually have adapted to salt tolerance. So we mapped the genes, and then we also showed which of the genes are more important for the salinity tolerance trait by doing transcriptional assay. So we found out there's some proteins which are involved in the signaling pathway and cytochrome assembly and cation transport, and also membrane potential. And then we went out, so we prepared markers for those regions which were important, and then we went about doing DNA marker assisted breeding for producing highly stress tolerant elite rice varieties for coastal Bangladesh by integration of those tolerant loci into commercial cultivars. So these 3 regions, chromosome 1, chromosome 2, and chromosome 3, we selected as being most important for salinity tolerance. So we designed markers against those regions, and we tried to put these 3 regions from the Horkuch land race into the commercial background of Biri release varieties, which is Biridhan 63, Biridhan 67, and Biridhan 74. So how did we do that? we actually, so if those three regions, if we call that a QTL region, so we identified that region as you saw by the genetic mapping, and then we design markers on two sides of this region, and then we also design markers for the background variety, because we want all of the background variety but also the donor QTL. So this is just a scheme for selecting the markers, and then we went on to use some fluorescent markers which would give us a quick handle to select progenies which actually have those QTLs which we crossed into them. So this just shows that, you know, like you have different, so the Horkuch has one nucleotide and the commercial variety has another one. So we have to select the right nucleotide. So we have two different colored fluorescent markers, which shown by the brown and the blue. So that's how we select very quickly. From a lot of progeny, we can select the desired alleles. And then what we did, this is with the help of the Bangladesh Rice Research Institute. These are the two gentlemen who helped in the crossing program. So when we genetically mapped Horkuch, we had some progenies which had all these, the salt-tolerant loci in them. So we used those to cross into, you know, separately cross into 63, the commercial line 63, 67, and 74. And so one of them had two loci, salt-tolerant loci, and the other one had another loci. So we crossed them, and then we double-crossed them, and then we kept on selecting progeny using those fluorescent markers. So this just shows that the fluorescent, you can just run PCR and select by the color which of the progenies are showing the blue and which are showing the one, so the orange. So we also can have heterozygous, and we select the ones that we need which have the locus that we want. Okay, so this is the scheme showing that how we selected the progeny in the backcross 1 F1 population. And you can actually just run the PCR and you can select which are the plants which have, so you isolate the DNA from the population and then you select by using these fluorescent markers. And ultimately, we produce some progenies which had the loci and maximum amount of the background of the commercial varieties. So this is just a scheme to show. So we have these 5 progenies which had the chromosome 1 locus, then the chromosome 2 locus shown by these borders within the red. So these were the locus we found, and with the maximum of the commercial background. And this table actually shows these 6 different progenies which had the 3 regions which were we deemed important for salt tolerance. One we call the Saltol QTL, another one was the root length, and another one is the potassium QTL. So all these properties are very important for providing salinity tolerance. And this is the proportion of the background or the recurrent parent, that is the 63, 67, and 74. So ultimately we selected these lines, and I'll show you. So this is the Biridhan 63 parent. So this is after salinity screening, and this is one of our lines. You can see that it does very well, and this is a tolerant control, this is a sensitive control, and these are the parents which had the QTLs which was integrated into this particular variety. So this plant has the background of Biridhan 63, and it has the salt tolerant QTLs. So we are actually we are determining its yield under salt stress, and that work is undergoing. And this plant, again, this is in the background of Biridhan 74. So this is Biridhan 74, and this is the progeny that we produced with the QTLs. This is the tolerant control, this is a sensitive control. You can see that this plant is doing better than the tolerant control and better than Biridhan 74. So this will be a salt tolerant version of Biridhan 74. And then BD 67, this is also already slightly salt tolerant, but our progeny does very well. You can see this is the tolerant control, the sensitive control, and the parents. And this is 67. So this plant also did very well, and we've already determined these yields. We are compiling the results. So this is a work in progress, and I have to thank lots of people. So for the mapping, it was a collaborative work with USA partners, Dr. Thomas Younger, UT Austin, University of Texas at Austin. He's in Nebraska. Then he's an International Rice Research Institute, Dr. Abdul Baghi Ismail. I have to thank BIRI. And then a lot of computational work was involved, so Texas Advanced Computing Center. And then the project funds were from USAID, National Science Foundation Peer Project. And of course, Dhaka University for hosting this. And then NATP project, the World Bank, the breeding work with the Bilidhan 6367. The funds were provided by World Bank, and it was a collaborative program between Dhaka University and Bangladesh Rice Research Institute. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And in fact, we are behind time, so I request all of you to go for the coffee break just 10 minutes, because the next session, session 3, was supposed to start at 10:30. And even in session 3, there are some Zoom presentations of speakers who are abroad. So please, you can have a quick coffee break. In 10 minutes, please come back. Then we will start the next session, and we will have the video and Zoom presentations. And of course, there are some people who are here. Then I will also give place for them to make their presentation. So please have a quick coffee break. 10 minutes, please come back.